We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And here we are at 999.9. We'll see what next week brings.
Oh my God.
I don't know what we're
Maybe that's just the fire we need lit under us, Rob.
That's the hope.
So
can't just
we are
create
recording
time
on
out of whole cloth.
On a Wednesday. We normally record on the Tuesday. We were recording on the Wednesday because Rob had to make a change or whatever. I don't remember.
Had an appointment yesterday morning. Yeah. So
yeah, what of course happened was the tile guy called Monday night and said, "Hey, I can be there tomorrow morning." I was like, "Of course you can." So yeah, faked him out this time, but I do have tile. So the repiping is done. The tile is done. Most of the drywall is done. Now they just have to finish the drywall and a little bit of repairs around where the tile went down.
okay.
So that's very nice. So there's that.
Not too bad.
Also, so like I said, we normally record on a Tuesday. Wednesday last week, so a week ago today, whatever. My back went out again.
Oh, God. Tom.
So
What the heck?
I don't know. So luckily, I had already had like a follow-up appointment with my back doctor guy who gave me the shots on Friday. So I went in on Friday, and he was like, "How's your back?" I'm like, "It's not good." He goes, "Well, that's unfortunate." I'm like, "Well, I'm glad that you feel."
The first time hearing of it, folks. So I'm hearing it along with you.
You're hearing it along. So I came home from work. I was kind of okay at work. I cycled in the morning and I went to work and I drove around town to go pick up my son and do a couple other things. But I stayed in the car the whole time, so I never got out of the car. When I got out of the car at home, I was like, "Uh-oh, that doesn't feel right." And so yeah, that was. So I spent the next couple of days on the couch. And I watched a bunch of TV, so we'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Watched a bunch of TV because I was like,
well, what are you doing here? Like, I guess you're good enough to sit in this chair, but what the heck?
Yes, I'm okay-ish. I am getting he's like, well, so I guess the last shot was like an anti-inflammatory cortisone something shot. Or shots. So there's 4 of them. He's like, "Okay, we're going to give you kind of a booster. We're going to give you another one.
Mm-hmm.
But if that doesn't work, then we're going to move on to step 2, which involves nerve blocking or something." I'm like, well, that
my goodness. That still doesn't sound like it's fixing anything. It's literally just numbing stuff over.
Hey, if any of you would like to be a free doctor and are actually a doctor, not just some rando who listens to this podcast who thinks that they can diagnose me and give, without seeing the MRIs and the X-rays and everything else. Because we get a lot of that around here. We get a lot of very audacious men, let's be honest.
You don't think all natural supplements can fix this one, Tom?
Well, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Let's ask Joe Rogan. Who think that by hearing a fragment of a story that, of the entirety of the story,
indeed,
that they can say, "Oh, well, this is what you should have done," and you're an idiot for not doing it. I'm like, okay. It's amazing to me that you think that I wouldn't have thought of any of the things that you've already thought of in this story. The experts that I have, the professionals that I have been consulting did not consider these things. Now, I do know that, doctors and professionals of all kinds, they have their preferred methods of fixing certain things.
Sure.
And that happens in every profession. When I got my ACL repaired, the doctor I went to prefers to take your own tissue and create a new ACL from it. And they do that in a way. I don't know how they do it. Magic. Other doctors prefer to use donor tissue from a cadaver And
Okay.
still others use something else. I don't remember if it's artificial or something else, but they use something else. And every doctor has success stories. Every one of those doctors has success stories that have worked well. But every one of those doctors prefers their method and thinks it's best.
Okay.
So yes, you could have had a doctor's like, a pipe professional or whatever, a plumber, who would have done it differently than the ways that my guys did it. And unfortunately, I didn't have your guys. So yes, this is what my doctor has said. He's got amazing ratings for everything except for his bedside manner, which he and I are going at it on that one because I like to, I'm going to call him out whenever he's kind of rude. And I'm like, everything but his bedside manner, he's like, he fixes people. He does it. But, it is what it is. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what my insurance will pay for. And this is what's been going on. So yes, I have been laid up for most of the last week.
Oh my goodness.
But the pain has gone from generalized I can't move to now more localized aching. So yes, I recognize this whole cycle is the cycle I go through every time I hurt my back. So when my back goes out, everything hurts. I can't move, and then it slowly gets the pain gets, or the aching or whatever gets better overall, and then it starts to localize, and then it goes away. So it's just as the muscles or whatever the wherever the pain is coming from is healing or getting better, or the inflammation's going down or whatever.
Right.
But I am. I am taking it as easy as I can. I've still got things to do. I need to go to work.
For that reason and others, Tom might not be here this entire episode. More than understandable if he needs to. That's right.
So I don't but it kind of sucks because like last night we went to like this political thing that my wife got invited to. It's like a mayoral candidate was like announcing that they're running and was getting signatures or whatever. I don't know. And so we got invited to that, and there was no chairs anywhere at this venue. And I was like, after about an hour, my wife was looking over at me and I was like, yeah, we gotta go. I need to go home. I need to go lie down. So that's exciting for me. But I have tile.
Great.
So that's good. We also got we ordered a very large from Etsy, a very large like shelving unit thing. Okay. And we were very excited about it. It was not cheap, but it's the style we want, and solid wood and all these other things. And it arrived, and yesterday against my wife's better judgment, I started putting it together.
Right.
And immediately realized that they didn't send all the hardware that you needed to put this thing together. So
that is worth finding out as quickly as possible. So
yes. So
don't go trying to lift it yourself, Tom, even though I know you will.
I had my son here. My 16-year-old son was helping me move things around. And he did get the Xbox working, by the way. He's very excited. Yeah. So the Xbox is currently in play, which has actually got me pissed off because he's always on it now. And I'm like, but he'll get over it once him and this new friend of his that he met on his Italy trip is.
Yes.
Well, anyways, so what's going on with you, Rob?
Already, like I said, had an appointment yesterday morning, and everything went well. So that was good.
Good for you.
Yeah, things seem to be pretty ship shape around here for the time being. And
if you don't mind me asking, is this ship shape you or ship shape family members?
Family members.
Okay.
Extended family. And then last week I showed off my little Lego Enterprise, and I said I hadn't put together the shuttle. Well, I put together the little shuttle. So it's a little shuttlecraft.
It's very cute.
It is.
It's not little.
It is cute.
I hate to say it might be little in relation to the Enterprise that comes out of. But does it go in there? It doesn't go in there. It doesn't go in the
it can't fit inside the Enterprise. It's not to scale at all. But yeah, the little back opens up, and the little
cool.
side flaps open up.
Oh, the side door opens too.
And it came with an adorable little Ro Laren figure, and I didn't show off
that was the thing, right? That the Ro character was like
so we've got all the figures, and I put Ro in there. They're that
Did they all
there
come
she is.
with it, or
Yes,
have you been
these
collecting
all came with these all came with the Enterprise, except that Rolaren came specifically with the shuttle, which was the free gift one.
What's the gold thing? What's that gold thing?
That is Riker's trombone. Will Riker has a trombone.
Riker has a trombone?
Oh yeah.
Am I
Riker.
forgetting this?
No, Riker played trombone, so that's the accessory that they put him in. Picard has his Earl Grey tea in a little cup.
I was gonna say he definitely played a flute or recorder or something.
They didn't give him the flute. Yeah, no, they gave him his Earl Grey tea. I very much like the Guinan figure. I think that's kind of a standout, and she's got her green Romulan ale or whatever that particular actual was. So yeah, we've got
Who's to do with the gun?
It's it's not a gun. There's a Wesley Crusher, and he's got his handheld portable tractor beam that he built in season 2,
Whatever
I think.
It was.
Yeah, that's what they gave him. So yeah, we don't have any Pulaski. Pulaski's not there. There's no Tasha Yar. People were very disappointed there's no Tasha Yar, but yeah, we've got the main crew there. It's very nice. Yeah. Data has his cat. Spot is here.
There's Crusher. Crusher's in there someplace?
Yeah, Beverly Crusher's here next to Wesley.
There.
And we got, I like the Deanna Troi as well. And the Worf is pretty fun. They've got the little headpiece there for Worf. So yeah, good stuff.
Deanna Troi is my least favorite character. I've said that many times, and I will die on that hill. I will... I will never understand. Like, I remember hearing later, much later, after the series had ended and everything, about all the hate that Wesley Crusher got, and I was like,
"Yeah,
really?" Same thing happened with like the Star Wars with the Phantom Menace, and all the hate that poor little boy guy,
poor kid who played Anakin. Yeah,
and I'm just like, do people really? I can't believe people actually do that, but apparently they do. It's really,
unfortunately, I can believe anything negative about people and their reactions online.
I was in such a weird little bubble of not believing that these things happen, and then becoming more and more disillusioned with society and humanity as a whole, as I realized that really these things happen, and then it just every once in a while, I find myself, I'm like, this is the bottom. This is it. This is as bad as it can get. And then...
Well, it's just, it used to be that the terrible people are a minority. There are way more completely decent, or at the very least, like, maybe they're not outright good people, but they're not a problem. That is the vast majority of humanity. But it's just that, now all the terrible people have been able to find each other. Before they were spread out, and they kind of thought that they were on their own. They thought that they were the only ones who thought that way because in their local community, they are the only people who think that way. But now they've been able to find each other spread out all across the world. And, it turns out that
watch YouTube.
Once you have 8.5 billion people on this planet, then there's going to be like over 1 million terrible people, and they've all found each other. So
I forgot to check PayPal.
Okay. We're not there yet anyway. You've got some time.
I just scanned down and I just realized that. Right. What did you watch, Rob?
Yes, indeed. So, moving on to what we watched. I did watch a movie this week, and I took in 28 Years Later. And so I have not yet watched 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, because both 28 Years Later and The Bone Temple came out in pretty rapid succession with one another. And so I'm looking forward to watching The Bone Temple because I'll just warn everybody straight up. I guess you could consider it a spoiler, but 28 Years Later, just like, you can't say it ends on a cliffhanger. It stops. It stops, and there is very clearly much more story to go forward, but it just stops at the end of its running time. It's like, oh, so that's why The Bone Temple came out so quickly after it, because it's just directly continuing on this story, and so this is basically a part 1 more than anything else. So they didn't label it that way. And I was aware that The Bone Temple existed and came out very quickly after, but I didn't fully understand that this is very much just a part 1 of this story, and so I don't think that's a spoiler. I think
it's you are telling me something that I had no idea that this was a part 1 or whatever.
I think it's kind of good. That's why I'm saying it. I think it's good to know that going in, because otherwise you're going to feel like I did of, oh wow, that just stopped. It's such an abrupt like cut in the middle of something that is clearly setting up for the remainder of this story. And so I've seen some criticism of people saying like, yeah, some of the storytelling and pacing seems way off in the story. I'm like, I think you're just reacting to the ending. I think it's just the abruptness of the ending and really feeling like we haven't come to a conclusion of this story that's been set up, because we truly haven't. We've paused in the middle, and the Bone Temple is where it continues on. 28 years later sees the return of Danny Boyle as director, because he directed 28 Days Later, but did not direct 28 Weeks Later, and 28 Weeks Later felt much, much different versus 28 Days Later. And honestly, 28 Years Later is a continuation of 28 Days Later and almost sort of retcon ignores 28 Weeks Later. That's kind of what's going on. I saw that movie,
and I can be honest with you, I can remember very little of it past the beginning. I remember the beginning, and that's about it.
And so Alex Garland has returned as the writer, and he's written all 3 of what is going to be the 28 Years Later trilogy. That's I don't know when the 3rd of that is going to come out, but so it's in the second one end
on the Boneyard or whatever it is end on the cliffhanger?
I don't know. I haven't seen the Bone Temple yet. I've heard that part 3 is more like a prequel. So I'm guessing that the Bone Temple ends the story. But
I hate prequels.
I haven't watched it yet.
I really do. I hate prequels because there's no tension. To me, there's no tension because that all the characters have to live, unless they do a true prequel where it's before the events of the whatever previous movie, and none of those characters are important to the story. They're like a baby or something, or they're tangential. Yeah, I mean that's why I liked Rogue One. Rogue One, it was like there was tension there. You know who these characters are.
All new characters in there. That's right.
And
other than Darth Vader, you could tell Darth Vader wasn't going to get taken out in Rogue One.
He was going to be fine, but that's fine too.
But yes, going back to 28 years later. So I mean, as the title clearly tells you, that is when it's taking place versus the breakout that we initially saw in 28 Days Later, going way back. Now the thing is, honestly, to understand and get the most out of this movie, I had to look things up afterwards because this is a very British-centric movie. And so there are things like things that are written on like posters in the background, or phrases that are said by characters, or things that are shown on TV in flashbacks that are context for all of the metaphor that's going on in this movie. That is like stuff that people who grew up in Britain, it's like that's their Saturday morning shows and stuff like that. But I wasn't familiar with them. Sure. And so I had to look up stuff afterward to really make sense of what was going on, because like we meet a group of characters. We're in this movie, we're not with them for very long. I'm assuming we're going to spend much more time with them in the sequel. But they're all dressed in a certain way and all speak in a certain way. And it's so affectated that I was like, well, that can't be an accident. Like, you don't just choose to look and speak this way in a zombie apocalypse for no reason whatsoever. I mean, even though we've got movies like Mad Max, where obviously it's like super heightened in the way people look and speak in that, I was like, we're following people who look and speak normally for most of this movie, and then we meet this group of characters that's so affectated. I'm like, what? So I looked it up, and like there absolutely is. Like they're basically dressing and speaking like there was sort of like a children's entertainer in Britain that was well known, I think in the late 70s, and then there was huge controversial things about that, like in real life, huge controversial things about this guy, like doing all sorts of terrible things to kids and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I didn't have any of that context, but that is absolutely 100% what they are alluding to in this movie, and there are other things like that in here. So Yeah, let's see. Where do I want to start here? So I want to highlight Alfie Williams. The main protagonist that we're following in this movie is a young boy. I think he's supposed to be about 12 years old. And so Alfie Williams is portraying that character. And I thought he was really, really good. I thought his performance in this movie was really good. You know, hinging everything on a young actor doesn't always work out, but he is absolutely up to this task. I completely believed everything that was going on with him, and the arc that his character goes through. He goes through a big character arc, and this is absolutely a coming-of-age tale. It's a coming-of-age tale, but set in a zombie apocalypse, you know, and that's an interesting tale to tell, but it's coming to grips with, like, having grown up knowing that the world is exceedingly dangerous and that you could die at any moment and that there is danger around every corner and you have to constantly be on your guard, and yet accepting that death is still a natural part of life, and that even if you aren't taken out by a rage, virus zombie,
yeah.
that people that you care for are still going to die anyway. It doesn't have to be from a zombie, that there are still natural causes of death, and that is largely what this movie is about. His father is portrayed by Aaron Taylor Johnson, so, you know, he's been around in a lot of things. They didn't have him take his shirt off, you know, missed opportunity there. You don't get to see how insanely ripped Aaron Taylor Johnson is in this movie, but he's playing a very, very, you know, physically capable character, but someone who is clearly not emotionally up to the task of, like, he seems like a really good father at first, and then this movie reveals how it's like, well, we don't necessarily have the time to spend with therapists anymore in this world, and this is a person who could definitely use some therapy.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
A little bit working through some trauma.
Indeed. And then Alfie Williams' character's mother is played by Jodie Comer, and she's really, really good in this. She is like all of the emotional heart and soul in this movie. And then the sort of mysterious character, almost the MacGuffin of this story that they're searching for, is portrayed by Ralph Fiennes, and he does a fantastic job in this movie. Like, he's such a good actor, but he's one of those characters where, like, so much is said about him before we actually meet his character, and then when we do, you instantly get what this guy is about, and he portrays that so well. So the acting in this movie,
promises kept, is what we call that. Yeah.
Yes. The acting in this movie is really good. I was really impressed with it. And then some of the cinematography in this movie, very interesting stuff, because we're set entirely, not even just like we're going to be set within Britain. We're set within this one very tiny island just off the coast. And, it's really, really contained to this one little area. And since, society is gone, 28 years later, society is gone in this tiny little area, it's like, well, all the stars that you can see at night and, all the way that former technology and structures and that has been dilapidated, and that I thought all that was done really, really well. Where I think I have a pretty major criticism of this movie is I give a lot of credit. Danny Boyle tries some stuff. He tries some stuff with some shots and that, and several of them to me just don't work. They try to do a sort of pseudo bullet time thing. A big portion of this movie was actually shot using iPhones. And so they had these rigs where they set up multiple iPhones, kind of like what they did for the bullet time in The Matrix. Sure. And it's supposed to be this sort of, when an arrow goes into the head of one of the zombies, it does the sort of bullet time thing where the time stops and the, things pan around like a bullet time effect. But they didn't have enough cameras and they didn't interpolate a bunch of frames in between. So it is really, really it looks like a mistake. It looks like a mistake. It looks like your stream paused and missed a bunch of frames, but it isn't. And so it's very jarring and it doesn't look good. And I'm kind of surprised that during the editing process, someone didn't say, oh, well, look, like I say, I give them all the credit for trying something new. They tried something out, and I'm totally fine with someone doing that. But I'm kind of surprised in the editing process, someone didn't say, look, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't look. It just doesn't look good. That is, I think, nearly objective. I don't think that's even a subjective opinion. It straight up doesn't look good. But they use it multiple times, and I kind of really wish they hadn't done that. He also goes for some very askew and strange camera angles, and again, it's like he's trying stuff, and I'll give anybody credit for trying stuff, but I'm like, during the editing, you can kind of choose to say, all right, we tried that and it just didn't work. And so I think there's a bunch of that in this movie, unfortunately. So it's a mixed bag, a very mixed bag. Some very beautiful stuff in there, and then some very strange and some stuff that I totally didn't think didn't work in the cinematography and in the shot composition. But yeah, overall, I feel quite positive about this movie. Again, if you're just watching it straight up, it's not that it's a incomplete. Well, yeah. So the narrative is incomplete because, like I say, it stops. So it's not like it's a not well told story just for the pure plot of it. But that's not the point of this movie. It is absolutely metaphorical, as was 28 Days Later. So it is. I assume meant to be interpreted that way. And like I say, I didn't have all the context. I looked it up afterward. I feel like I was missing a ton without knowing the context of some of this. Like people who grew up in Britain just know this stuff, but they don't stop to explain it to you whatsoever. And then there's other footage and some poetry and songs that are also interspliced. And I'm like, I need to look up that stuff too, because I need to know it's not there randomly. It is absolutely intentional and a part of the metaphor. So I think there's some homework to do in order to get the most out of 28 Years Later, but I give it a thumbs up.
Fair enough. I mean, there's a bunch of not metaphors, but certainly symbolism and references that are in American movies.
Yes.
That not everybody's going to get, and
Absolutely.
That includes my kids. I'll be honest with you. If you had put like a TV show like Captain Kangaroo type character on the screen in a movie like this, I would get that reference because I was born in the 70s. Whereas my kids would be like, who is that person and why is their hair so bad? So yeah, I mean, fair enough. I don't think that every movie has to and should be as widely digestible as possible. Sometimes you can make something that's very that has references that you're like, listen, you're not going to get it, but that's fine. You don't have to get everything. I feel like Japanese movies and some in Korean movies to some extent are definitely that way.
Yeah, that's right. But like what I would just say is, if you aren't willing to do any homework whatsoever and you don't already know what they're alluding to, like, I don't think you're going to think it's a fantastic movie like completely on its own without context, because that's not what it was meant to be as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's the warning I would want to give.
So a long time ago, Rob said that I should start watching Parks and Rec.
Okay.
And he also said I should watch the first and the last episode of the first season and then skip straight to the second season. People say stuff like that.
If you don't want to put in all the time.
People, excuse me, people say stuff like that all the time, and they're like being a little bit, reductive and joking when they say that. And I of course, there is no bone in my body that will allow me to watch the first episode of a season and the last episode of a season and just trust that person was not lying to me. So I watched the whole first. I think I'm almost through the second season at this point. I've watched a lot of episodes, but I watched the entire first season, and I don't think he's wrong in that you could, I don't quite understand how they got a second season, because that first season was like, I don't like any of these characters. Like, they're so mean. And
well, it got through just because of the success of The Office. And so they had some faith that, because I mean, the very first season of The Office wasn't nearly as strong as the core of that show either. So they had faith in Greg Daniels, and they were like, okay, we know they're able to figure out if the first season isn't super strong. And then the first season of Parks and Rec is not exceedingly long either. It's a small number of episodes.
It's like 12 or something
but it's just that, my fear is that, anyone who's only watching the first season, they might go, I don't even really want to keep going. Like, that's kind of my fear with it. So that's why I'm like, okay, if you're in that camp, then it's like, I don't think you can entirely skip everything in season 1, but I want you to get to season 2 as quickly as possible, because that's where it gets
there
good.
are definitely some things. There's some episodes in season 2 that reference facts you will not have if you don't watch the whole first season. So I'm watching this because my wife doesn't really have the attention span to sit through an entire first season of something that's not good.
There you go.
So I'm watching it by myself, mostly because I've been lying on the couch a whole lot.
Yes.
But, the second season, you can definitely tell by the Christmas episode of the second season where Leslie Knope, who's the main character, obviously, Amy Poehler, is she is like given leave for a day. So her team, the rest of the Parks and Rec team, have to do her job for that day, and they're looking at this list, and everybody, you realize, and I think that's what kind of leads to her being eminently, like in the first season, she's kind of a dope and doesn't really.
That's right.
Isn't really effective at what she's doing, and is self-conscious and trying really hard. And by that point in the second season, you're like, no, she's actually really good, and she's some sort of weird superhero at her job.
Well, it was like the change
funnier.
that they made to the Michael Scott character.
Yeah,
they're like, it's actually funnier if the character is secretly highly competent.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Definitely enjoying the changes to the characters. It almost felt bleak the first season.
Yeah,
it didn't feel uplifting in any way.
That's right.
It felt very sort of like everybody sucks and it all sucks and nobody's good at anything, and nobody wants to do their job, and government sucks. And I mean, I'm not saying that some of those things aren't true, because it definitely is. But the second season, where the characters start having character and not just, hey, let's be mean to this one guy. And like that one, Jerry, is that his name? Jerry,
it's not that they stopped the running gag. Yes, he is the Meg Griffin of this show, so that is going to continue on. But
they were like, he barely spoke for an entire season. He had like 3 lines. He wasn't
part of the main cast. He was just a background character.
He had like 3 lines, and all they did was just dump on him the entire time. So it was kind of good to see some of this stuff, some of these characters kind of get fleshed out and stuff like that. So I'm enjoying it.
This is one I will say it just gets stronger and stronger as it goes along. So it's I'm glad to hear that. I'll never regret somebody watching the first season, because you do get all of the context. But yeah, my fear is always that if someone is like kind of on the fence, and then they fall off of it before giving it a chance to where it gets good. So that's my concern.
Yeah, it needs it doesn't need that much of season 2, like 2 or 3 episodes, and you're like, oh, I kind of like these people.
That's right.
So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been watching. I'm still watching gymnastics too. I think we finished the SEC finals. I think Florida won. I don't remember. I don't care. I don't care who wins. I'm watching it for that. And now we're on to the men's Big Ten, which is different. I don't know. Anyways, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your question answered. All you have to do is ask. Yes, by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to the website, find our shows, our show notes, links to any products that we'll refer to in older shows as well. There's a Flickr album that you can follow along with the pictures that I'm sure there's pictures in here someplace. I haven't seen any yet, but I'm sure there are.
There will be some.
Contact, you find us at facebook.com/AVRant podcast, youtube.com/AVRant. The pictures will be embedded in that video. So if you don't want to have to scroll through a Flickr album, then you don't have to. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. You thank our listeners of the week. Become a listener of the week. All you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways to do that is going to avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and send us a PayPal donation. By the way, some of that PayPal money went to buy a bunch of speaker cable and some subwoofer cables that I needed to get. So that's one of the things I did while I was lying on the couch. I ordered speaker cable. So I'm going to get that home theater. I need to get the subwoofers out of my garage. I don't have space anymore. So those will be set up in the next week. Maybe not the overheads, but the surrounds and the subs will be set up. So that's what some of your, then also I think Libsyn and all the other reoccurring, the website charges and stuff all comes from that PayPal.
That's
stuff.
The main thing.
Yeah. And then if you want to support us monthly, patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can be a monthly contributor, a minimum of $1, and most of the money goes to us. So we currently have 119 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, that's right. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, big thanks to our 119 patrons over there. The number actually did not go down since last month. So there you go. Yeah. Nobody's credit cards expired on April 1st.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so let me see. I lost Hulu because the credit card changed. I lost Amazon Prime because the credit card changed. So I'm excited about that. We're going to see how long it takes us to notice that we don't have Amazon Prime anymore. I have a feeling it's going to take us a long time. I am thinking about getting... I would like to get the Crunchyroll. I would like to get Crunchyroll. Mm-hmm. The problem is that if I get Crunchyroll, my son is going to use Crunchyroll, my 16-year-old son, and I'm not putting parental... I don't even know if it has parental controls, but it definitely needs it. Because anime... I mean, I'm not saying that he's not 16. He can't find what he wants to find, but I can't. I don't have to serve it up to him.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I would like to watch a couple of animes that people keep talking about, and I feel out of the loop on. But yeah, whatever. Well, I got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from David, who was sorry to hear about my plumbing problems. He asked about a new home warranty situation. Was the house sitting vacant for long enough that the new home warranty was already expired? There wasn't any new home warranty. It was basically, it's a builder who sold it like a private citizen. So there was something like that. So for those of you that are a little interested in that, I will give you a quick update. So my wife did a record search, like a request for records from the city and stuff like that. What ended up being the case was there was a plan for a house where I think I told you guys this, all the stuff was on the other side of the house. All the bedrooms were on the other side, which is why this pipe was on the wrong side of the house and nobody can figure out why it was there. Not only that, there was an initial slab that was laid, which I think had pipes in it. I think, right? I don't know for sure, but there was an initial slab that was laid in like 2017, but then the second slab was laid on top of it for the house that I'm currently owning. That was laid like on top of it, maybe around it, kind of expanded it based on that. And I think what happened was, and nobody knows, so don't come at me.
Okay.
What we think happened was that there was plumbing that was put into that initial slab for that initial house, which was pressure tested and worked fine. Mm-hmm. And then they put the other slab or whatever and put the house on top of it, tied into that stuff. Ugh. And that's why this particular thing was not found. There was no home warranty. That's not how any of this worked, because that's I mean, again, of course, that was my first question. I'm like, do I have any? This is a brand new house. I mean, brand new. I mean, but the house was finished in 2023. Okay. That's why there's no wood in the walls hardly, and it's because at that time there were still like shortages of wood when they were ordering all that stuff, and it was. We were told that metal studs and the metal bracing girders, trusses or whatever, were just as expensive as wood, but more available than wood was at that time. Yeah. So that was when, like, a sheet of plywood would cost. This is now maybe not in 2023 when the house was finished, but when they were starting construction. Which
prices were still elevated in 2023 on wood products.
So that's why it was all constructed out of metal instead of wood. So no termites, but also you can't just sink a lag bolt into a 2x4 and hang your TV like you want to. So that's my understanding of all this. But it sat for a while. Of course, we bought it in 2025 and into 2025. So it sat for a while and it was sold like a private citizen. In fact, the builder guy and his company did not sign the papers they were not the seller. It was like his wife or something like that who was the one that was the official seller, the official owner of the house or whatever. So there was no home warranty. We got this gratitude from Richard, from Trevor, who says that he, for one, enjoys hearing our personal updates since it makes us sound human. Hey, AI sounds pretty good these days. What am I led them to believe? But I can count to 100 without.
That's right.
Without messing up. And Sasi. So we got notes of gratitude from David, Richard, Trevor, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
That's right. I'll say the names one more time. We got David, Richard, Trevor, and Sasi. Thank you very much for those notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. Big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news here, Sony held a press event in Tokyo to announce and demonstrate its upcoming RGB backlit LCD TVs. They also made the claim that some of the competition out there, using various branding such as micro RGB, RGB mini LED, RGB micro LED, is leading to confusion. I don't see how that could possibly confuse anybody. And it is sometimes only using 2 unique color diodes rather than 3 truly unique diodes. So they're going to brand their version as, Lord help us, true RGB, because that will clear everything up. Never mind that this still isn't a direct view display. With,
right, I hear a branding like true RGB, and I'm kind of thinking, oh, so you have actual red, green, and blue light emitting things like a quantum dot OLED, or particularly like a micro LED display, an actual micro LED display with separate red, green, and blue subpixels that are emitting their own light. That to me is a true RGB display. It is actual red, green, and blue subpixels emitting the light. But no, that's not what this is. These are actual red, green, and blue mini LED backlights, but they are still sending their light through an LCD shutter layer. That is what is actually choosing the colors that you see is the LCD screen, but you have red, green, and blue mini LEDs as the backlight in behind there. Sony says that means it's true RGB. That's the branding.
So with 11,520 individually controllable backlights, does that mean you have to divide that by 3?
Divided by 3 to get like the traditional number of zones, or the white. If you're producing white light, then divide the 11,520 by 3, because that's the white zones that you're dealing with. But every single red, green, and blue mini LED backlight there is individually dimmable and addressable. So you end up with
3,840. By the way, 3,840 zones, if you will.
Which is exactly the same number of zones as any other television that is using the same MediaTek chip controller. So all of the Philips ones, all of the TCL ones that are using that same MediaTek chip, they have the exact same number of zones. Surprise, surprise.
So anyways, there's almost 4,000 zones and up to 4,000 nits peak brightness. Sony will position their new true RGB LCD TV models as this year's flagship, but all available screen sizes, prices, and launch dates are yet to be announced. So that's...
Yeah, as long as you have some very deeply saturated colors that are larger in size than the individual zones, you get, that what they did in the demonstration was remove the LCD layer so that you could just see the backlight, and compared it side by side with their own flagship from last year, the Bravia 9, which, all along was using white LEDs, or technically blue LEDs that are going through a yellow phosphor to create white light. So they're just showing you the pure LED, scanning that's going on back there. So yeah, it looks like a low resolution version of the images that you're seeing. But yeah, once you have things that are smaller in size than this, less perfectly saturated in primary colors than this, and moving on the screen, then, as it has been pointed out with these RGB backlit LCD displays, most of the time that backlight is just white anyway, because once the images are smaller and not so purely color saturated, and also the images are moving, there's not much you can do besides make the backlight white and then control the colors with the LCD shutter layer as we're doing right now. So yeah. But Sony is claiming they're doing it the best way possible.
Somebody's gonna go into a Best Buy and say, well, do you have true RGB?
That's
like
right.
Sony does?
That's
Is this Samsung a true RGB?
That's right.
No, the Samsung is an OLED. Well, is it a true RGB OLED?
I mean, it really doesn't help that Samsung is like, they have actual micro LED displays. That Samsung The Wall is a full-on micro LED display, and then they're like, but our RGB backlit LCD display, that's micro RGB. No confusion could happen there. Which one do you want? Do you want the micro LED or the micro RGB? And the RGB is newer. Yeah.
So this comes from our listener, Sasi.
Yes.
Back when the new Arcam Radia Series speakers were announced, we wondered aloud if they were actually made by Revel. I did not wonder that. Since the tweeter design and driver materials all appeared to be Revel technology.
That was one of the weeks you were away, and we had certainly Joe was around for that one. I think that was one of the 3-man podcasts with Lee and Joe. So we wondered aloud. Joe and I wondered aloud. We're like, those look like Revel speakers. Those Arcam Radia speakers.
Well, we have a clear answer because Revel just announced their new Performa 4 series, and they are are identical to the Arcam Radia series, except without the yellow trim. So this reminds me of was it Bryston or whatever came out with speakers, and we went, those look like Axioms, and then Axiom's like, yeah, we made them.
And ultimately Axiom now owns Bryston outright. So what do you call it there? Where you can't quite tell. Where nothing unclear about that. So similar here, the Arcam speakers, the Arcam Radia speakers are Revel speakers.
Okay. The Revel Performa 4 So the Revel Performa 4, I think, is
that's the series.
That's the series. So there's the F346, the F345 towers.
Yeah.
3, 4. I'm trying to figure out from the numbers if I can figure out what's going on here.
Yep.
So I cannot.
F is for floor standing. So F floor standing.
Yeah.
3 means it's three-way. It's a three-way design, tweeter, dedicated mid-range, and bass woofers. The 4 is the Performa 4 series. And then the 6 is the 6.5-inch woofers in the larger size tower, and the 5 is the 5.25-inch towers in the smaller towers. So the numbers actually do mean something.
There's no reason to have that 4 in there. It's 2 4s. You don't need 2 4s. You could just put F36, F35, and that. I don't even think you need the 3. Yeah. I think you just needed the F.
It is more similar to the Arcam Radia series model numbers, but you got the 346, that's the bigger one. The 345 is the little bit smaller one, the 5.25-inch driver.
So there's the M146 and the M145, which I guess they're one ways. Is that what the one is supposed to be?
I don't know why they're not 2.
Why wouldn't they be 2?
I don't know. Anyways. M is for monitor, even though they are bookshelf speakers.
I got that. Yeah. Yeah, and then the 4
maybe
series.
It's the number of binding posts. I don't know. I didn't see the backs of these.
Maybe. Well, that wouldn't make any sense because the centers are the C245, and I guess it's only the C245, and then there's the B for subwoofer.
Yep. Bass
140.
I don't know.
So one way Series 4 was zero woofers in it. A 0. It's an imaginary woofer. If you it's what do you call it? It's Schrodinger's woofer. If you look at it, maybe they'll be there, maybe it won't. So
it is a 10-inch driver, so they couldn't go.
Oh, they just couldn't put a 10 in there.
You can't do 2 digits.
Couldn't do that.
If they create a 12-inch, it'll be the B142.
So, anyways, this lines up 1-to-1 with the Arcam Radia R45, R35, R25, R15, R35C, which is obviously the center, and the R25B, which I guess
was the subwoofer.
Subwoofer.
Yes.
Why would it
Nothing
be a
confusing
bookshelf?
about having 2 of them being R25, but one of them is a bookshelf speaker and one of them is a subwoofer, and only the B tells you the difference.
This is dumb. So it's just like, when your marketing team has to keep going back to the engineers and saying which one is which.
Yeah,
that should be a red flag that you have named poorly. Anyways, that's dumb. They're all sharing the same 1-inch DCC, which is a deep ceramic composite dome tweeter, and either a 5.25 or 6.5 inch MCC woofers.
MCC stands for micro ceramic composite,
as opposed to deep. What is deep?
The deep it's actually an aluminum dome tweeter, but it's been like coated with a ceramic.
With ceramic? Oh.
So it's
a Teflon
ceramic.
Just call it Teflon.
The MCC, it's not aluminum. It's just a ceramic driver.
So while the Arcam Radia speakers only come in black with yellow trim, the Revel Performa 4 series offer black or walnut finish options with no colorful trim on either. Reportedly, the Arcam Radia series will be sold in Europe, while the Revel Performa 4 series will be sold in North America, so they won't entirely overlap. Prices have been announced with availability scheduled for late April, which is... I got to go through these numbers and letters again. Oh, so much fun for me. $7,000 a pair for the largest F346 towers, $5,000 a pair for the smaller F345 towers, $3,000 a pair for the M146 bookshelf, $2,000 a pair for the smaller M145 bookshelf, $1,500 for the C245 center, and $3,000 for the B140 sub.
That's right.
There's no world in which I think that subwoofer's worth it, but maybe it is.
That is the same comment that I made along with Joe and Lee. I was like, yeah, there's no chance I'm telling you to get that 10-inch sub. Also, they quoted the extension, the base extension, as the -6 dB point on all of these.
That's always what you want, -6 dB.
And even at -6 dB, that sub came nowhere close to 20 hertz. So yeah, that's not going to be the value champ.
It's more musical, Rob.
Right.
It's more musical.
But I will say, if you're going by because when the Arcam Radia Series was announced, they only announced the prices in pounds and euro. And now that makes sense because that's where they're going to be sold, is in Europe, and not so much in North America. But just going by the straight exchange rate at the time, these prices on the Revel Performa B Series are definitely on either the low or even slightly lower than just straight exchange. So in terms of value for the dollar, they're pretty good that way in comparison to their Arcam Radia Euro price points over there.
Sofabaton, they will be releasing their new U3 universal remote. Look at that. It's a U because of a universal remote, and it's the third one they've released.
It's true.
How hard is that? Like, you can look at it, the letters and the numbers and say to yourself, this all makes sense. So if somebody said there's a U2 remote and a U3 remote, you go, is the U3 one the newer one? And you would be correct.
Yes. Yep. But just looking at it, if you're seeing the pictures, you may be like, that seems like a new design.
Yeah. Anyways, they're aiming for May as a release date, but we'll see how that goes. They haven't announced the price yet. The U3 is sort of like a cross between the older U series remotes and the X1S. The shape is much more like the X1S and has a scroll wheel that you can click to control the LCD screen on the top. Thankfully, the back button for the screen is below the screen instead of above it, so single-handed control should be more comfortable.
Yes.
The U3 offers IR, Bluetooth, and RF controls, but is not hub-based. It's not a hub-based remote. All of the signals come out of the U3 itself, but if you don't want to have to aim the U3 at your devices in order to use IR control, the U3 can be paired with the R1 ball IR extender, just like the X2. Which they sent me one of those when they sent me the other thing, and it came out of the box to get a picture taken of it, and it was a nightmare to take a picture of it because it's round. I'm
very glad for that because certainly one of the limitations with the U series remotes has been that they were Bluetooth and IR, so the addition of radio frequency is a new thing, just like it was with the X2. But as far as any of the infrared, which is most regular remotes that you're using, you had to point the U series remotes at whatever you were controlling. So that is still the case if all you do is buy the U3, but I like that now you can pair it with that R1, the little ball IR extender, and so while it's not a fully hub-based system, at that point, the Bluetooth is still coming straight out of the U3 remote. That's fine, and you don't need line of sight for that, and then you can use that R1 IR repeater so that you don't need line of sight directly from the remote to the device itself. You can use the IR repeater, and I like that setup very nicely.
I like that. I wouldn't get too excited about the RF based on my experiences with the RF and the X2, but it's something. So, whatever. So the U3 also gets a built-in rechargeable battery, and there will be an optional charging dock. So the X2 has a charging dock that it comes with, but also there's a USB-C connection on the bottom that you or bottom, I don't know what you call that, the back of it. I don't know if that's the bottom.
It's the bottom. Yeah, it's bottom edge.
Kind of the bottom that you can plug into. And I've used that more than once because it's like the dock is over by the TV, which I very often plug in because of the new functionality that we talked about last week or the week before. But occasionally I'm like, oh, well, I'm just sitting here and I've got a phone charger near me and it's USB-C. So it's actually pretty nice.
But from the images that they sent, it does not appear to be a USB connection to the charging cradle. But given that the charging cradle is optional, I'm thinking there has to be a USB connection on the bottom of that remote because there's still going to be a way to recharge it if you do not choose to pay more for the optional charging cradle. So, not entirely clear. We don't have these things in hand yet, but that's what we've been told so far.
So the U3 has physical buttons for the number pad, just like the previous U series remote models, but the rest of the physical buttons are more like the X2 or the X1S layout. It is not an activity-based remote, but now there is a dedicated macro button below the screen, so you can create your own macro activities, as it were. The other new button below the screen is to activate the built-in microphone. It only works with Google Voice Control. Somebody was just asking us about that last week,
That is
right?
Somebody was asking about Sofabaton with is there anything with a built-in microphone? And we didn't know about the U3
We didn't
at
know
the
about
time.
this.
Here it is. Yeah.
A week later, and we're wrong. Oh, God, the YouTube comments are going to roast us.
Not about the X2. It's not as though the X2 magically got a microphone added to it, and they were
It's true.
specifically asking about the X2. So that still does not have a microphone, but the U3 has a microphone built in, and there's a button right below the screen to activate the mic.
So it only works with Google Voice Control and only via Bluetooth, but it's the first time that the microphone has been built into a Sofabaton remote. So there you go. You can now have I like this. This is good. This is good. So guess what the X3 is going to have when it comes to our X2S?
Yeah, because I have to say, like, you know, I'm familiar with the X1 and the X1S, and then moving to the X2, and yeah, definitely, like, you know, the screen on the U3 is not a touch screen. That is not a touch screen up there. If you want to control anything that's on the screen, you're using the scroll wheel that's below it, and it's a thumb scroll wheel. It only goes up and down. It doesn't go left and right. And you scroll up and down, and then you click on that scroll wheel itself with your thumb to activate whatever you've highlighted on the screen above. And as long as I used the X1, it's like that still never got completely comfortable to me. There were still times when I would press either the up and down arrows, just absentmindedly thinking I want to change something on the Sofabaton X1's screen, but I was pressing the up and down arrows, and of course that's controlling the up and down on whatever device you're controlling. You have to use the scroll wheel to control the screen, and then there were the times where it's like, yeah, once in a while you go to click that wheel and it accidentally scrolls a little up or down as you click it or something like that. Now I'm very happy that the back control for the screen itself is a button below the screen and not above it, because it became a two-handed operation on the X1. So there's, you know, improvements, but also a little bit of a step back. Obviously, I would have preferred a touchscreen, but that would cost more, right? The U series is definitely going for lower cost than the X series. We don't know what the price exactly is going to be on the U3 yet, but it's going to be less than the X2. That I can guarantee you.
I'll tell you, I'm so glad the X2 doesn't have a scroll wheel, and it's not for any of the reasons that Rob just said. It's because I would get a divorce. Because there's no world in which I just not sit there and flick that thing while I'm watching TV. I get in trouble when I'm driving because I'll take my fingernail and I'll just like click my seatbelt.
Right.
And my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm not doing it on purpose."
What you're doing?
I'm
you
sorry.
Need a fidgeter.
I need a fidget spinner.
Yeah.
Comments from our listeners. Infinite Gary was sorting through a bunch of stuff in his basement. He came across an old Panasonic Technics product that is off the beaten path, to say the least. If you look at this, it is a shoe shine thing.
Yeah, when you first see it, it's like, okay, it's a little white disc. Is that a button for something? Is that all
I
it
thought
is?
it was like a record player, like a vinyl cleaner.
Right.
For the record.
Yes. Yeah, you open it up and it's a brush inside. And yeah, exactly. You're like, hey, maybe that was to do with a record player or something like that. Could make sense. But on the bottom, it says what it is. Shoe polisher. A speed shine brush. Interesting.
Panasonic makes a bunch of crap. But in my mind, this is either a promo item that was given out at a CES back in the day when people like wore nice shoes to everything because that's all they had before Crocs, which is now apparently what everybody wears. Or like maybe the shoe, because I was trying to read the bottom of this thing. It doesn't say anything about Panasonic on the bottom of this thing.
Not particularly, no.
So I'm wondering if this is just the top of something else that just so happened to fit this thing. But probably not. He says he has no recollection of when or how he obtained it, but who knows? Maybe it's rare and worth something. I don't know, man. Maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotta find the right collector.
That was a funny one, though. I'm like, you could, if you just showed me the white disc with the Panasonic and Technics logos on the top and said, "What do you think?" this white disc is. I could have guessed forever, and I
Forever.
never would have come
Shoe
up.
shine would not have come up.
That is a shoe shine.
I would have said like a
polisher
pill box. Maybe it had mints in it. Mints are a really popular thing to give out. You know what they should be giving out at CES? Mints and deodorant.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
mints, deodorant, and lip balm, because a lot of times it's in like Las Vegas. Well, CES is always in Las Vegas, but even CEDIA's, people come from all over to go to these things, and they're often dehydrated, so they need lip balm. All right. Ray heard us talking about the WiiM Amp Pro and the WiiM Amp Ultra and how they do not support Apple AirPlay 2 the way the older and less expensive WiiM Amp does. In the case of our listener who was asking, there's still no reason to pay more for the Pro or the Ultra when the original WiiM Amp will do everything he wants just fine for the lower price. But we mentioned how we're not sure if the older WiiM Amp is going to remain available for years to come, and how we're worried that a future firmware update might remove AirPlay 2 support at some point. So if either of those things ever happens, there is a workaround for adding AirPlay 2 support. So this will obviously work with those other WiiM
That's
amps
right.
as well. So it's so rare for them to take away features on something.
It's not
unless
unheard
they're
of,
forced
though.
to. It's
It's
not unheard of.
of.
But unless they're forced to by the other company who's like, you're not paying us anymore, so take it off or we're going to sue you into non-existence. So the WiiM Mini, which sells for $90, is WiiM's current PlayStation 2 solution.
What?
It has analog
PlayStation 2? AirPlay 2?
AirPlay 2. What did I
Where
say?
did PlayStation come from?
I saw the play, and I
guess so.
My bad. Excuse me. I apologize. So the WiiM Mini, which sells for $90, is WiiM's current AirPlay 2 solution. It has analog stereo and an optical audio output, so you can connect it to any audio device, including the Pro or the Ultra, and to add AirPlay 2 compatibility. So this is just an FYI for our listeners. So that's good. It's good.
That's right.
Also
it is
sounds
good
like
to
you
know
could-
that there's a solution if you need it. But yes, I still see no reason to tell someone when the WiiM amp is still currently available and what they want to do is do AirPlay 2 with a WiiM setup. I'm like, yeah, just pay less, get the WiiM amp. I wouldn't tell you pay extra to go get the WiiM amp Pro and then also pay another $90 extra to add the WiiM Mini. That wouldn't be the solution, but it's good to know if you need it in the future.
So that's interesting. So you basically add this to like your receiver or whatever. It doesn't make any difference, right? Anything.
That's right.
That's interesting. For $90,
Yeah.
I mean, if AirPlay is your jam,
That's right.
this sounds like a good solution. That's
It
good. Thank
reminds
you.
me a little of like the old, the Google Cast audio that we liked and lamented when it went away. It's a fairly similar idea.
But I understand why it went away, because it's too niche. All right. This comes from Anonymous, who didn't want to reveal their name or their company, or the company that they work for when making this comment. But they are an employee of a large computer and server manufacturer. They wanted to provide a little bit of context regarding the console price increases we have derided recently. While this comment is very apropos and it does shed light on this, doesn't change the fact that prices going up as much as they are is problematic for consumers and for the companies that are happening. I'm not saying they have a choice. I'm saying that it's so problematic. So for the computers and servers that they manufacture, over the past 9 to 12 months, I don't know if anybody can think of anything happened in the last 9 to 12 months that might have precipitated this. Commodity component prices, mostly RAM and SSD prices, have gone up by 300%.
Sure.
There's nothing that they, as a manufacturer, can do about it, and it has caused chaos, and nobody wanted this. Well, that's not true. Some people did.
Seems like.
I don't know why they did, but they did.
But
so the consumers that were
at
paying...
this person's company, I can see them saying nobody at their company wanted
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
That I could believe.
Yeah. I wonder. I wonder if they thought about that when they made choices in their lives. Consumers that were paying $550 a month for a server contract are now looking at a nearly $1,700 a month contract. And that is not some sort of price gouging on their end. So as far as they're concerned, the price of a PS5 Pro going up $150 means that Sony is actually eating a loss still and only raising the price, the minimum that they can afford to, which should mean to you as a consumer that they're going to raise it again. Basically, they're going to keep this as low as they can and try to eat a loss in order to still sell some consoles. But either the prices are going to come down because something will change. Can't imagine what that might be, or they're going to have to raise prices again. So
I mean, the stock price on RAM manufacturers went down because of Google's whole announcement thing of them saying that they've got a technology where they can use 6 times less RAM for what they're currently using in their AI data centers, and then they're like, oh, you're not going to need so much RAM, and the price of RAM on the stock market went down. But combined with a whole bunch of data centers that were contracted but apparently aren't going to be built because it's just not going to happen. They're like, hey, maybe the RAM supply will go back up, and then I'm sure that everyone will lower their prices, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how that works. Yeah. Nelson, first, he wanted to say that he has fully settled into and is enjoying his 98-inch TCL QM8K television. He had misgivings about changing over from a JVC projector with a 120-inch screen from 9 feet away, but sitting 7 feet away from the new 98-inch flat panel. That is so close. While it felt physically close at first, it has wound up being no problem at all when the lights are turned off. Yes. This is I think a very common thing that happens with people is that they make a change. They're like, I don't like it. It's new and I don't like it. It's weird. I don't like it. It's odd. I don't like it. And then they sit in the chair for half an hour and they forget that they didn't like it, and suddenly they like it. So
I also think him having those curtains on either side really helps. It really helps because it just frames in the screen and it makes it look not so out of place.
So he settled on having the gamma set at 2.2 and the black level setting got set to 1 tick down from at 49 instead of 50. All right. So now the black bars are completely black and the massively increased brightness and contrast cannot be denied. He thought he'd always be a projector fan, but now he cannot envision himself going back. Only an even larger OLED at an affordable price would top the picture quality he is enjoying now. I mean, I think an OLED at it doesn't have to be larger. That's what I was going to say.
I mean, there are 97-inch OLEDs, but at nowhere near the same price as a TCL QM8K.
So he wanted to mention his experiences after buying Sofabaton X2. He's been using the Harmony 1100 remote for ages, but now its servers have been shut down. It can only be programmed via the PC Harmony software, which is no longer working. The X2 seemed like the obvious replacement to try. It worked great for his Panasonic Blu-ray player, Roku Ultra, and Lutron Lights controller right away, but the TCL QM8K had some troubles. The default TCL remote is actually Bluetooth, and he was able to get that working by adding the X2 as a new Bluetooth remote, but it would not power the TV on and off. Sofabaton's customer support was unfortunately no help at all with this issue. But he discovered on his own that TCL remotes use IR instead of Bluetooth specifically, and only for the power on and off commands. Engineers.
Good to know.
As someone
I
who's
didn't know
it. There was a thought process there that if you were walked through, you go, okay, that makes sense. But for every other person on the planet, it's like, why? Why would you do that? So there's no way to have a single device that uses both Bluetooth and IR with the X2. But since he uses activities, he created the TCL IR device that just powers on and off. And that let him program his activities to all work properly. Well, that's good information for us, to be honest with you. Yes, thank you for sharing this. So sometimes it takes some sleuthing and creativity, but not everything is plug and play and user-friendly, but he's overall very happy with the X2. Its weight makes it feel like it's worth the price tag. It's also not perfect controlling the lights, and he wishes after pressing the off button that he could default to controlling a given device, the lights in his case, without having to manually select a device or new activity. It's fine for him, but not intuitive for the rest of the family. So the only problem I've had with the X2 is occasionally, it will not power on the Apple TV 4K.
Right.
And there's no rhyme or reason to it that I can ascertain.
He mentioned it not specifically for Apple TV 4K, but it's also going to apply because he was saying when he was doing that IR specific on and off for the TCL, he's like, so he tried just using Sofabaton's own codes, That didn't work for some reason. And so then he tried learning directly from the remote that came with the TCL. And he's like, so it says that it functioned, and yet quite often he would go to turn it on and it wouldn't turn on in response. In the activities, you can choose whether your power on and off are a click of a button or a press and hold of a button. Yeah. And so he changed it over to a press and hold to turn it on. And he's like, now it works flawlessly every time. And I found the same thing with the Apple TV 4K, that you have to change it to a press and hold, and then it turns on. So yes, things you have to sleuth through sometimes. But what's been really interesting is that so far, everybody's come to us with stories of like, it didn't work right away, and it definitely took working through it. But so far, everyone's managed to find a way to get the thing to work eventually if you stick at it long enough and use some creativity, for sure.
The one thing I missed about my Harmony was that there was always a help button, basically.
That's right.
And then you press the button and it would try to power everything on again. Or
there
power everything
is on
off
the
again.
Sofabaton as well. It's not labeled help, but you can press that little question mark button and then step through the activity again manually. So it sort of exists.
Yeah. It needs to be more obvious.
Yes.
Questions. Adam. Adam continues to try to work through the issues with his Emotiva XMC2 Pre-Pro that cropped up after he updated its firmware.
Yeah.
To start the audio dropouts that happen when he switches apps or episodes on his Apple TV 4K seem to be the fault of the Emotiva, not the Apple TV. As we suggested, he turned on the relatively new continuous audio connection found in the Apple TV's audio settings, and that part is working fine. The Emotiva just seems to have a bug or lag or something where it loses track of the incoming audio signal. He can toggle the listening mode to reset the connection and get it working again, so it's an inconvenience, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
That's great. That's fun. That's fun.
And it was only after he did the firmware update.
And you can't unupdate it, right?
You can't go back.
You can't roll it back.
You can't roll it back. They warn you not to. They didn't say specifically what it was, but he's been in touch with the Emotiva, and they're like, well, we don't have the XMC2 anymore, and there's essentially nothing you can do. It's going to turn into a gigantic heavy brick if you try to roll it back.
Expensive brick.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyways, it took him a little while to figure out how to get the XMC2's Dirac live outboard hardware to connect and all be recognized on his network. Emotiva provides a little 5-port Ethernet switch, and you can use it. And you need to use 3 Ethernet cables, one to the XMC2, one to the Raspberry Pi that is used for all the Dirac live code translations, and the third to your network router. What?
Yup.
That's insanity. Then your laptop needs to connect directly to your network router, not to the same little Ethernet switch.
Yes. That throws people for a loop for sure.
The little Ethernet switch and the Raspberry Pi both need power, and after all of that is plugged in, then you need to navigate through the XMC2's menus to put it into Dirac Live enabled. Crucially, those weren't the crucial parts? Anyways, crucially, you have to remember to manually take the XMC2 out of Dirac Live enabled mode after you are done taking your measurements and uploading your saved target curves. Since Emotiva's tutorials are all explained using the microphone that Emotiva provided, he decided to use that mic instead of, say, UMic 1, which is entirely compatible, but he wasn't sure if Emotiva's tutorial instructions would still apply one-to-one. They say to load a calibration file for the Emotiva mic, so where does he get that file? Was all that just to ask for that? Where the file was?
Well, I mean, it's all going to be germane to the rest of his questions that are coming up.
Okay.
I figured I'd explain it all first.
That is insanity.
It's
have you lost your minds?
Call super user friendly for anyone who isn't technically minded in some of this stuff.
Well, not only that, this is clearly we got it to work.
Yeah.
And therefore we're not going to optimize. Like, we don't have the manpower. And I do like to bag on Emotiva a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I love their amps. I've got no problems with that.
Yeah.
But they're these pre-pros that they put out and some of this other stuff they do, they just don't have the resources to do it in a way that is anything other than extremely niche, if you will. Meaning that somebody like Yamaha or Denon or Marantz or any of these other companies, they have the manpower and the number of people available with the right expertise for them to go through and be like, yeah, that's not good enough. We can't tell people that. Have you lost your minds? Whereas at Emotiva, they're like, listen, man, do you want to put this thing out ever? Because this is as good. We got it to work. Is that going to be enough for you? And this is how that happens. And I'm not blaming Emotiva for this. Believe me, they are just never going to be as big as these other. I blame them for trying to put out a pre-pro. I mean, they shouldn't, as far as I'm concerned.
Emotiva with their price points, they are not targeting the super high-end luxury end of the market. They are targeting the people who are like, I want all the features at a really very low price for what you're getting, and yet I also don't want a mass market brand. Like it is a niche. It's the definition of a niche for someone who's going for an Emotiva Pre-Pro. But it's like, look at Trinov, that is 100% targeting the luxury end of the market. And it's like, how long did it take them to support HDMI 2.1 versus, say, Denon or Onkyo, at a way higher price point? I mean, Trinov also a much smaller company than Denon or Onkyo or something like that. But it's just like, when it comes to some of these things, hard. It's like they come later. They come with much more less intuitive setups, and that's the only way to do it. But yeah, this is an entirely fair question because you can't even look up the XMC2 on Emotiva's website anymore. It's just 404. That page is no longer found because that's a considerably older model, and they just don't have the page for it anymore. If you find any of the tutorials, whether they're the written ones or the YouTube ones, all of those links are dead. Right? The links to here's where you can get the calibration file is just 404 file not found. So yeah, it takes a little bit of looking, and thankfully there is still a site on Emotiva's page for Dirac Live, and you can find the one that is applicable to the XMC2 as well as the older RMC1 and RMC1L. Those were all of the same generation, and you can download the calibration file. It is still available, but for anyone who is like, why don't you just Google this or, follow the links? Can't you find the thing for the calibration file? It's like, no, all the old links are dead, including you look it up on Google and they're all, 8-year-old links and they don't go anywhere anymore. So yeah, this is a totally fair question.
But AI will confidently supply you with those links and tell you that you're just doing it wrong.
Oh yes, but it is still available, thankfully, and will have the link that'll actually get you there.
So, second question starts with too many places to adjust volume! Exclamation point.
Yes.
So the first thing that Dirac software has you do after you've connected to the XMC2 and then chosen the correct USB microphone and loaded the calibration file for that mic, and you have a spaghetti wire monster.
you got a lot of Ethernet cables going around.
Ethernet cables everywhere. Is that it has you manually set the master volume going from the software to the Emotiva, set the microphone again, and set the channel level for each and every speaker and subwoofer. But in his setup, that doesn't actually cover everything. He's using Crown amps, and those all have gain knobs of their own.
Yes.
Lord help us.
I mean, not crazy. This thing is a
you know
pre-pro.
what? I'm going to be honest with you. This is actually the real world use scenario for somebody who's buying an Emotiva
100%.
Pre-Pro.
Yeah.
This is people who are looking to maximize their bang for buck, if you will. And guess what? Emotiva amps are great, but you can get cheaper amps.
That's right.
And Crown amps is one of the go-to amps that you might buy if you are trying to save money.
It could be Behringers, particularly for a lot of people's subwoofers. They go for the Behringer amplifiers. Then it's going to be the case there, too. They have their own gain knobs on those professional amplifiers.
Yeah. And if Emotiva were a bigger company, they would account for all these things.
Right.
Because they could. But they're like, listen, man, we got to get this thing working. Grab me an Emotiva amp, and we'll stick it together. And this is we'll make sure it works that way. And if they want to buy something else, that's their problem. But we'll get to all that in a moment. First up, how is he actually supposed to calibrate the microphone gain in the Dirac software? Because he's read like half a dozen different instructions or recommendations, and none of them are the same.
Yup.
Emotiva themselves have two different tutorials. Then people on their forums say to use a different setting. Then the instructions for if you're using a UMIC 1 are different yet again. And then there's one more write-up with different figures for the UMIC 1.
Yeah.
So what the heck should it actually be? And should he adjust the master volume setting first? And what about the actual knob on the XMC2 itself? Does that need to be changed at all? And then, of course, he didn't say it again here, but the crown amps as well. So this sounds like
that's what we're going to get to after. But yeah, we got this is order of operations, and I did a little editorializing of the question he wrote in because I'm like, I want it to be somewhat comprehensible, and you do need to.
It's barely comprehensible as it is.
Exactly. And you do really want to do things in a fairly specific order. So first and foremost, before we get to any of the volume adjustments, really before you've begun the Dirac process at all, you'll want to go into the XMC2's just regular speaker setup, because you need to choose what the speaker configuration is before you begin Dirac. This is not like Odyssey, where you can plug in the Odyssey microphone, begin the Odyssey process, and during Odyssey, it will attempt to play its test tone signal out of every possible speaker that your Denon or Marantz receiver supports. And when it doesn't detect any signal at all, it says, oh, you don't have that type of speaker connected. Maybe you don't have surround back speakers connected. Maybe you don't have top front speakers connected. It's going to try to send that signal, but when it detects nothing back whatsoever, it says, oh, you just haven't connected those speakers, and it configures as it goes. Dirac on the Emotiva does not do that. You have to manually choose which speakers are actually present, and you have to choose beforehand whether they are small or large. And so you need to do all of that beforehand, but you need to do it. This is critically important. You need to do it within a Dirac preset. This is before you've connected your laptop. This is before you've begun the Dirac software. In the XMC2's on-screen menu, you need to go into a Dirac preset, the one that you're intending to use for what's coming up, and manually set which speakers are present and whether they're large or small. You need to do that first. And then you need to make sure that all of the channel levels and the master volume are zeroed out. That's 0 dB, right? So not plus or minus on any of the speaker channel levels, and not plus or minus on the master volume. Everything's set to 0. That is the starting point. And yeah, you want to make sure you've done all that before you begin any changes in the Dirac software. So then, yeah, he was asking, what should that gain level be set to on the microphone, because there are so many different recommendations, and you can use any USB microphone because it's plugged into your laptop. It's not plugged directly into the XMC2. It's plugged into your laptop. You choose which USB microphone you're using in the Dirac software. You can then optionally upload a calibration file. We've provided the link to where you can get the one that works for the Emotiva branded measurement microphone. But then there's this microphone gain setting and this master output setting. And there's all kinds of different advice. So Emotiva, I would go by their own most up-to-date tutorial, which is from 3 years ago at this point, but this is a considerably older processor than that, and there was an update. And so what their recommendation is, you have nothing playing. There's no test signal playing, there's no test tones playing, there's nothing playing, but you adjust the microphone gain for their own Emotiva branded measurement microphone until it reads -40. On the little scale there. And the original one had a different number, and the write-ups have a different number, but this is the most up-to-date tutorial from Emotiva themselves, and with their own microphone, with this specific processor, with your Dirac software, you adjust the gain on the mic in the software until it says -40, and that's the beginning point for that. So yeah, there you go. While you're actually actively running the Dirac software on your computer, the physical volume knob on the XMC2 and the speaker trim levels in the XMC2, those will be ignored. But after you've finished with the Dirac software and shut all of that down, those settings, the master volume dial on the Emotiva itself and the channel level settings, they apply on top of whatever Dirac did. So we're actually going to revisit that because it's very useful when it comes to the channel level settings and adjusting the relative channel levels. It's actually kind of a benefit that you can manually change those after the fact without touching the Dirac software whatsoever. But yeah, you want to have those zeroed out before you begin. And then, yeah, it should be -40 while it's sitting idle. They're like, it's fine if you're, within a ±3 window if you need to be, but that's where the gain should be adjusted. And you should expect that when you now go through and play an individual test tone out of every single speaker, that you configured beforehand which ones you have and which ones are small and large, you should expect that it's going to give you a warning that every single one of them is clipping because that tends to be what happens with the idle setting for the microphone gain set to -40. So be prepared.
That's exciting.
Isn't it?
So his next question, okay, so if he has now adjusted the microphone's gain, how should he adjust the physical gain knobs on his Crown amps?
Yeah.
Back when he was using the Outlaw Audio Pre-Pro, he had the gain knobs on his Crown amp set to as high as they could go, with their XLR input sensitive set to 1.4 volts. With the amplifiers themselves set that way, he used to have to lower the channel levels on his Outlaw Pre-Pro around 4 to 6 -4 to -6.
Yeah.
Because that's supposed to be dB, but whatever.
Well, not necessarily, because you have those channel trim level settings, right?
Yeah.
And they don't always say dB on them.
They
But
don't
yeah,
always say dB.
-4 to -6, there's no problem with that. That's totally fine. That's very well within expected.
And that all worked nicely, it seemed. But when he initially tried things that way with the Emotiva while using Dirac Live software, all the channel levels constantly clipped.
Yeah.
You can only get them to stop clipping if you set the physical gain knobs on his Crown amps to around 50%. After that, playback sounded clean, but significantly lower in volume. So how should he actually have the controls on the Crown amps themselves set up? I mean, generally speaking, with a amp that has a volume knob on it, what you want to do is turn it up as high as possible.
Yeah.
Unless it makes noise.
That's right.
So
I like
some
sitting
amps,
idle, right? Just sitting idle, no signal actually playing. If you're hearing an audible hiss while you're in your seat and you're hearing a hiss coming from your speakers, you probably want to turn the gain knob on the amplifiers themselves down a little bit until you don't hear that hiss at your seat anymore. Yeah.
And I would be a little bit more, I'd be like, not just at my seat, I'd be a little bit closer to the speaker than that, just because I would want to know that I wasn't right at that noise floor level. And then I would set all my amps to be exactly the same. Like whichever one, if there was one speaker that's a little bit more sensitive and it had to hiss a little bit at a little bit higher, lower, you lower the amp a little bit more, I'd make them all be exactly the same.
Yeah.
At that point, I wouldn't have different volume settings on my different amps, and then I would take the volume knobs off if I could, or put tape over them or something.
Yeah,
or,
at least mark it with a little Sharpie. Here's the line where it lines up so I can get it back there if it ever moves accidentally.
Yeah. So that's what I would normally tell you to do, but I don't know. Is there something different here, Rob?
No, but I mean, it's exactly like we said. We want to turn the gain knob on the amplifier itself as high as it can go without creating noise. And he's like, well, I had them up at their maximum and it was totally fine in my old setup. And I'm like, there you go. You can leave those gain knobs on the Crown amps themselves set as high as they can go. That's great. You're getting maximum headroom output capability out of those. But like I said, you should absolutely expect that after you've adjusted the microphone gain and the Dirac software, that as soon as you play any test tones out of any and all of these speakers, they're all going to warn you that they're clipping. And that's what happened. He's like, so I should turn that down, right? Well, that is where this master output slider that is also in the Dirac software, that's where that comes into play. And here's the thing. One of these speakers in your setup is going to be the quietest speaker, right? It's going to be the one that has the lowest sensitivity and is the physically farthest away from you. One of your speakers in your setup, and I mean, obviously maybe there's two that are equal, but like one speaker in your setup is going to be the quietest. And so you basically have to, through trial and error or through some, educated guessing, you're like, look, my surround back speaker is the lowest sensitivity and it's the farthest one away from me. It's probably going to be that one. But you have to basically, through trial and error, discover which of the speakers here in this Dirac software before you go any further is your quietest speaker. And you're going to do that by leaving its individual trim level set at the top at the 0 dB, but then adjusting the master output down until it's not clipping anymore. Then all of the other speakers, their individual trim levels in the software, they're going to get lowered because all you can do is lower them in here. You can't boost any of them. All you can do is lower them. But you're going to have your quietest ones so that it's not clipping, and then all of the other ones are still going to be clipping, but you're going to lower their trim level in the software until none of them are clipping. And that's the ridiculous process of setting your trim levels, to begin the process in Dirac. But yes, I can see why it's confusing. It is not user-friendly whatsoever, but that's how you do it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
He knows from experience that he prefers a bit of a bass boost and a little bit of a treble roll-off. So how should he adjust the Dirac Live target curves in this software? I mean, I think that is the Dirac Live target curve. I mean, to my recollection, that's what their target curve is. So don't touch it. There you go.
Yeah, the issue was that through no fault of Adam's own, he was getting all these clipping errors and stuff like that. So I can see why he's like, he didn't even really get to hear what the default target curve genuinely sounds like. But yeah, by default, it has a gentle rise from treble is a little bit lower and bass is a little bit higher. But other than that, you do just grab with your mouse on the software, and you can turn the target curve into whatever you want by just dragging it to the levels that you want. So if you want to add a little bit more bass boost to any or all of your speakers, to your subwoofers, whatever it is, you just drag it with the mouse and you add that boost to the line that is drawn on screen.
So is there a setting in the Dirac software when you are manually adjusting the filters that lets you either enable or disable the delay/gain? Or there is a setting. Yeah. There is a setting. So what's that? And should it be enabled or disabled? Disable the delay/gain.
So that is the setting where it is equalizing all of the channels to each other and also adjusting the delays /phase. Because what Dirac allows you to do is if all you want is a pure amplitude equalizer, if you want nothing else, where it's not trying to time align your speakers and it is not trying to adjust their phase to be all phase coherent. If you don't want it to do that and all you want it to do is make some frequencies louder and some frequencies quieter, then you disable that delay/gain setting. But I would definitely leave it enabled, which is the default, because I want it to do more than just make some frequencies louder and some quieter. I do want it to try and balance the volumes across all of the speakers and balance the phase. So yeah, I would leave that enabled for sure.
So Adam would like to tidy up the XLR cables in his equipment rack a bit. So first up, are there any XLR cables with 90-degree female plugs that we would recommend? Female plugs?
That'd be the side that's going into the pre-pro.
Yeah. I mean, they are almost always like adapters at the very least, because I know I've seen them before. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like to recommend the adapters because he already has XLR cables, so why replace all of the cables? Just get the 90-degree adapters. I like the ones from Cable Matters because they actually let you change the angle on both the female and the male end. So whether you want that 90-degree curve to go up, left, right, down, they let you change that, and not all adapters do. So they're $20 a pair, not the cheapest thing ever, but not the most expensive, and they have that adjustability on both the female and the male end, so I really like that. It's a comprehensive solution when you want a 90-degree bend.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
He'd like to use an XLR rack mount with short XLR extenders. Any reason the ones he found on Amazon wouldn't work? No. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, these look totally fine.
I didn't even look at them. I'm just like, XLR cables are not exactly the most complicated thing to do.
I mean, the only thing is you want to make sure they really are a pass-through, and then they're not the type that on one end, pin 1 actually goes to pin 3 on the other end, or does something like that. You want pin 1 to pin 1, pin 2 to pin 2, pin 3 to pin 3. So the ones he linked to are exactly that. They're a pass-through, and certainly the little rack frame is totally 100% fine. So yeah, for $40, he'll be able to do what he wants.
There you go. He was looking to grab an inexpensive but halfway decent sub, so he quickly looked up Klipsch's. Is this the first time he's listened to this podcast when he asked this question? Because, anyways. Looked up Klipsch's subs that are currently selling on Amazon. What's the difference between the R12SW and the R120SW? The specs look the same. The R12 is a bit cheaper. Is there some reason to avoid it? Because you shouldn't buy a Klipsch sub unless you absolutely decided to do that.
Sometimes the Klipsch subs are okay for the really low price points. Quite often, I have mentioned them in the past, so I'm not 100% against this.
I mean, at this point, RSL and if you're getting a smaller sub, or not a smallish sub, and you don't like RSL, or they're out of stock as they often are, then SVS would be the next.
Well, but I mean, SVS is going to be way more expensive unless you're going used. So yeah, the R12 and the R120, they are essentially the same sub. They just were like, the R120 is newer with a little bit updated cosmetics to match the series that it was a part of. But in terms of like capabilities, the R12 and the R120 from Clipshark are identical. So just get the cheaper one unless you really, really care about the subtle difference in their looks. But yeah, given that the R120 is priced right at $300 these days, yes, if I were to have my druthers and you're willing to pay for it, I would get a Speedwoofer 10E from RSL. $340, that includes shipping, so that's the one I would point you to. But if you absolutely have to get the lowest price, then go for the R12 because it's $100 cheaper.
$100.
Yeah.
Andrew from AV Gadgets, he sent me pictures of this, by the way, over the weekend. So
okay.
I did see all this. So he found himself a great deal on a 77-inch LG B5 OLED, so he snapped it up. He already had a B9, but all of the setting menus look different now because it's a 2019 versus a 2025. And there are entire picture modes that weren't available on his older B9. So who's got the best settings for him to follow, and should he be sticking with the ISF dark mode, or is filmmaker mode the way to go these days? I mean, I always go to routines, but is this behind a paywall these days? Or
it is, yeah. It'll be behind a paywall over there at Artings, and also I don't 100% agree with their settings. So Vincent Tio over at HD TV Test, if he has posted settings, I'm going to go with Vincent Tio's. They are going to be bang on, and so thankfully he has. These actually apply to both the 2024 and the 2025 LG OLEDs. So I mean, yes, these are slightly generalized. But it's Vincent. He does a fantastic job of mentioning any minor differences that there might be. He covers it thoroughly. So he has a video for like the general settings, which is going to help you like get out of all the power saving mode and any of those types of things that aren't specifically the picture settings. Then he has a video that is just for the picture settings, and it's pretty much as simple as you put it in filmmaker mode, and that is for Dolby Vision and HDR10 and SDR. There is a filmmaker mode, picture mode for all of those now, and there's honestly not much you have to do beyond that. He recommends pulling the sharpness setting all the way down to 0 instead of leaving it at its default of 10. But other than that, there's really not much you need to do. I mean, of course, if you're doing a full-on specific to your unit calibration, that's different. But in terms of the general settings, that'll get you well within the ballpark without doing much effort at all. Yeah, you want to use the filmmaker mode on the B5. Then he also has a third video specifically for gaming settings, because those are going to be different again. And you do want to use the game optimizer mode if you're gaming on the B5, not the filmmaker mode. You want to use the game optimizer mode, and Vincent has all of the settings you need for that on your B5. The main one is that you're going to change the white balance, because by default, the game optimizer mode is too blue, and you're basically going to make it as red as it can be, as we normally do. But they don't label it as like cool and warm in the game optimizer. They give you a slider, and you're just going to slide it all the way to the red side, and that's about it.
There you go. Richard, who's just outside of Montreal, Quebec, which I don't know if we're holding against him or not. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I don't know.
It's so you know that he's in Canada.
Okay. So going back to November of last year, Richard wrote us to ask several questions about his basement setup. To start off, he wanted to wall mount a smaller size TV along with a Sonos Beam soundbar in his home gym. I vaguely remember this.
Yes,
I do.
We're going on a little picture tour as we follow along. So we got the door at the top of his stairs, and then we're heading down the stairs into his basement.
And based on our recommendations, he bought the Pearlsmith articulating wall mount along with the mounted bracket for the Sonos Beam, and those both worked well to let him aim the TV and the soundbar together to whatever he wants them to look at the home gym or wherever he is in the gym. Mm-hmm. He also liked what we said about having wide viewing angles on the TV so that it wouldn't be a problem if he didn't aim the TV all the time. So he paid a little bit extra and went for the 48-inch LG B5 OLED. Outside the home gym, he's been looking forward to finally setting up his home theater area. It's open on the right-hand side to the smaller bar area and the stairway, but there's a door at the top of the stairs, and doors close off the gym, so it ends up being a reasonable volume of air to deal with. It's all hardwood floors or tile that looks like
laminate floor,
hardwood.
probably.
Yeah, laminate probably. Yes, I feel like we've seen this before too.
We sure have. Yep.
He had already pre-wired inside the walls with everything running to a fan-vented cabinet to the right of the TV area, and spots for the subwoofers were pre-wired on the left and right side walls of the open space as a whole. Wow, that's a lot of wires in that thing.
Yeah. I'm very glad to see it vented. It is clearly vented.
It's clearly vented, yes. And the itty-bitty window up top, I remember that, and there's speaker wire coming out of the walls. So once again, based on our previous advice, he made some equipment purchases. He went with an 83-inch LG C5 OLED with an Eco Gear articulating wall mount that will let him pull the TV forward a bit to get the field of view he wants. Plus, it will leave some room behind the TV so that he can acoustically treat the entire front wall the way we recommended. He got a B-stock Denon X3800H receiver from Gibby's, also like we suggested, and he managed to get a pair of SVS PC2000 Pro cylinder subs. As a little side about those, we had linked to Summit Hi-Fi since their website showed the PC2000 Pro subs as still being in stock and available for purchase. But when he went to buy them, the owner of Summit Hi-Fi actually contacted him and let him know they were, sadly, out of stock. There were no plans for more PC2000 Pro units to be shipped into Canada. Every other Canadian retailer that he tried was also unable to ship any PC2000 Pro subs to him. So as a last resort, he contacted SVS USA directly, and they said that they could sell a pair of PC2000 Pro subs to him, but due to their distribution agreements, the shipping address would need to be in the States. So he found a freight forwarder close to the border, and thankfully their storage fee was very reasonable, and there was no issues having the sub shipped to him, shipped to them for him to pick up himself. So he drove across the border illegally. Sorry.
No. He must have had a passport.
Declared them at customs, paid some tax, and brought them home, all for the total price that he was actually a little bit less than the listed price for the pair of them for many of the Canadian distributors anyway. So there you go. So with that experience, he feels a lot more comfortable buying speakers online from an American company and having them shipped to that same freight forwarding company. And that's where his newest questions come in. He for sure still wants to wall mount his surround speakers on the back wall where he has pre-wired for them, but he's very okay with our previous suggestion to sit the front three speakers on the pre-built cabinets directly below his TV, which will provide enough space behind the front three speakers to cover the entire front wall with acoustic treatments. Since he went with the 83-inch OLED, he knows exactly how much space he has left below the TV for the center speaker, so he's narrowed down his choices to two. We had previously suggested the Arendelle 1961, that doesn't sound like me, the RBH Impression Series speakers, that does sound like me, the Ascend Sierra Duo V2, which I don't think we ever talk about Ascend on this podcast.
Right, yeah.
Or the KEF Q4 Meta, which probably sounds like me. Well, the KEF is out because it's just a bit too big. And the Arendelle wouldn't ship until May, and he doesn't want to wait that long. So he's mainly considering either the RBH Impression Series or the Ascend Sierra Duo V2, and he's leaning towards the Ascend because it's the most compact, which gives him a bit of wiggle room for placement and aiming, and he likes the looks. Mm-hmm. Get that one.
Seems like a very reasonable way
those
to
are
decide.
both very. I would either one of those reasons would be enough for me to say that's the one for you to get, even though I love it, RBH. Either one of those reasons would be enough. With both of them, it's a slam dunk. So, other than the price difference, which he is fine with, any reason not to go with the Ascend Sierra Duo V2 as a center speaker? No.
I can't think of any reason to tell you no at this point. Yeah, the only reason would be price, right? If you're just like they're just too expensive, then that's the only reason. But he's like, nope, I'm fine with that price point.
So assuming he goes with the Ascend Center, should he get the Titan Dome tweeter or pay more for the Rowell ribbon tweeter? Again, he's fine with the price either way. I mean, how bad is your FOMO, I guess, is what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say that there isn't a real difference between the Rowell and the Titan, but
right.
I mean, if you're going to get the center, you're going to get this, at the very least, the left and the right. So you're not just paying more for one speaker, you're paying more for all three.
That's right.
So,
and potentially the surrounds as well. Yeah, for sure.
Which you probably would do that as well. So, I mean, it's just... How bad's your FOMO, and is it if it's worth it? Because I think that in a theater situation, will the women tweeters make a difference? Yes. Mm-hmm. Will it be night and day to the point where you're like, I am so unhappy with these speakers, I should have gotten the Rowell ribbon tweeters? No, I just don't think that's going to be the case. So
Right.
how much, if the money is really not a consideration for you,
Right.
just get the RAL tweeters.
Yeah, I mean,
Be
you
fine with
don't
it.
go with a Sierra series and not get the RAL ribbon tweeters unless you simply can't afford them. I mean, that's you're looking at those speakers and you're like, yeah, I'm going to get the ribbons as long as I can afford them. But honestly, like, you know, we're able to see the sort of distances that he's working with there. There's no concerns about output capabilities or anything like that. We're not dealing with 2 rows of seats, and he's going to be able to aim them. So any concern about the vertical dispersion is really not a drawback
I
whatsoever.
mean, he's sitting so close to this stuff
That's
too. It's
right.
not a big room.
So, I mean, the only sort of question mark here is how much are you going to worry about the surrounds matching? Because if the total price of the speakers is going to start to become a problem, then, you know, having the matching surround speakers with RAL ribbon tweeters, that's a significant cost increase. You could save quite a bit of money. And then it's like, okay, if you did go down to dome tweeters in the surrounds, how much are you going to care if your front 3 have ribbons and your surrounds have domes? I mean, that's only something that you can decide upon. So,
I think sonically, you're not going to notice
not tremendously so,
mismatch.
but I mean, he is close enough here, and these are like surrounds that are close to his seat, that it's like, okay, you know, I can maybe make the argument that having the matching tweeters all around would be the nicest way that you could do this thing. So yeah, if the price is not a concern, I'm going to say go ahead and get those ribbons.
Yeah. So he says if he gets the Sierra Duo V2 center, should he stick with a matching pair of the vertically oriented Sierra Duo V2 speakers as his front, left, and right, or should he go with the bookshelf Sierra 2 V2 or some other model? The tweeters should match whatever he decides for the center speaker, right? I think so.
For your front, left, and right, yes.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know why you would. First of all, you got 2 massive subs for this space. I don't know why you would need anything other than the smaller bookshelf speaker for the distance at which you are sitting.
Sure. I'm going to make the argument here, though, that, I mean, and honestly, it's not any sort of a price problem. It doesn't make a difference that way, that I would get 3 Sierra Duos. And part of that is that the Sierra Duos are front ported, and you are having this plan of, you know, covering that front wall with acoustic treatment. Potentially, what I also like is his initial idea was to wall mount the speakers, and it's like, well, you still have that option if you go with the Duos. So if you change your mind, they're still going to be wall mountable. Whereas the bookshelf speakers are, you know, you'd want to use like clamping wall mounts. You could do it, but it's not quite as easy. The Duos are very easy to wall mount if you ever want to. So it gives you the flexibility, and then they're also the front ported design. So I'd have 3 of those going across the front.
I agree with that. Okay. And it's more of a design, like you said, it's more of a design. People get stuck on the idea that something is a center speaker, so therefore it can't be used for anything else. I'm just like, it's fine.
No, I mean, they sell them as a vertically oriented pair, as the Sierra Duo as well. So, yeah, I'd get three Duos to go across the front.
Which pair of speakers should you get as wall-mounted surrounds?
The Lunas. If you're getting the Duos with the RAL ribbon tweeters up front, then as long as the price is not a big problem, you're going to get some Lunas, which are very easy to wall mount, and put those as your surrounds. Yeah.
All right. How big is this question?
Yeah, we still got 15 minutes at least. So.
Well, I know, but I got to go. I have to go. So, do you want to go on by yourself? Is that what's going to happen here? Yeah. All right. So, Trevor, I'm sorry I won't answer your question. I don't know what your question is because I just scrolled past it. Yeah, and then there's a Sasi question.
There sure is. I shall carry on my lonesome.
All right. Have fun, kids. I will see you soon.
All righty. Thanks, Tom. We'll talk to you next week.
Oh, speaking of which, yes, I'm supposed to get a shot in my back on Wednesday next week. So we are not going to be doing a podcast on Wednesday. We'll have to do it on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday should work next week.
All right, sounds good. See you next week.
There you go. Some behind the scenes making of the sausage there, folks. Okay, bye-bye for now, Tom.
Bye.
Okay. So, carrying on here with Trevor. Trevor has an old subwoofer, and it just has left and right RCA inputs. It does not have a dedicated LFE input like pretty much all modern subwoofers do. So if he is connecting that old subwoofer to a modern AV receiver, can he still use the receiver's sub-out connection? Or should he be using like front, left, right pre-outs or something along those lines? Does he need to use a Y splitter that will feed the sub-out connection to both the left and right inputs of the sub? If he does so, will the old subwoofer now function exactly the same as if it did have a dedicated LFE input? So, I mean, the thing is, you don't have to use a Y splitter. You get some free gain if you do, a little bit of free gain if you do, but as long as the subwoofer with just a single RCA connection, it can go into either the left or the right input from the AV receiver's subwoofer output, which is totally fine to use. If you do it that way, you might have to turn the volume knob up, another 3 dB versus if you did the Y splitter. But yeah, as long as it's got the output capability, you don't even need to use a Y splitter. You can go to either the left or the right, and using the sub out is totally fine. It is not exactly the same as a dedicated LFE input on a modern sub, because the dedicated LFE input on, I mean, I can't literally say all, but most modern subwoofers, by default, it is just going to take whatever the signal is from the AV receiver and feed that straight through without any filtering. Whereas if you have a sub that only has left or right inputs, then it almost certainly has a crossover adjustment knob. So if you're using the subwoofer output on the AV receiver, you've set now the crossover between your subwoofer and your speakers in the AV receiver. You've set that electronically. And so we generally don't want to have what we would call a cascading filter. So if you set like an 80 hertz crossover, that means that in your AV receiver, it's starting to roll off the output to the subwoofer just a little bit, a little bit lower than 80 hertz, and then it's rolling everything off electronically in the AV receiver above 80 hertz, sending that signal out to the sub. So if your subwoofer also has a crossover knob, you wouldn't want to set the crossover knob on the subwoofer itself to like also 80 hertz, because now you're going to have two filters filtering off that bass. It's going to actually be making the bass too quiet above 80 hertz for the intended crossover. So the normal advice is on the subwoofer itself, you just set the crossover knob to as high as it can possibly go. That's as close to having no filtering from the subwoofer itself, and then you're just relying on the subwoofer output and the crossover frequency you've set in the AV receiver, and it's totally fine to connect your old subwoofer that way. He's got a second question is, we like the Sewell brand banana plugs, right? I certainly do. Tom actually prefers to recommend locking banana plugs whenever possible, but I'm a big fan of the Sewell brand banana plugs, and they are just the regular, like just relying on a springiness of the banana plug. So it is possible that over a long period of time, some of that springiness is lost and you don't get as snug a connection. But the Sewell banana plugs are so inexpensive that I'm totally willing to just replace them if and when that time ever comes, and I'm not really worried about it whatsoever. So he's just like, which exact model? He's come across the silverback model and he's come across the deadbolt model. I'm actually going to say neither is my 100% favorite. My favorite are the strike model from Sewell. What I really like about these is they are super fast and easy to connect. You just strip off a little bit of the cover on your speaker wire. You just splay the inside strands of the speaker wire just a little bit, not very much, because inside of the strike banana plug, there's this big old wedge of metal. So you don't have to do like anything fancy. You just feed it through the bottom part of the barrel that you've unscrewed. You splay the strands of speaker wire just a little bit so that they sort of spread themselves naturally around that cone of metal inside. And then you screw in the bottom of the barrel and it holds it really securely with a really good connection. And it's as fast and simple as it can possibly be, connecting any banana plugs. But my second favorite are the deadbolt. If you want to, like, I guess, know in your mind that you've hooked the speaker wire around something inside and then tightened down on top of it. That's what the deadbolts are. So you feed the speaker wire up through the bottom of the barrel of the deadbolt Sewell banana plug. You splay the strands of speaker wire out and around that like inner metal part of the deadbolt banana plug, and then you screw the top back down on top. So you have a full like splayed and hooked amount of speaker wire on the inside, and that makes a very, very, very secure connection. The deadbolts also cost a couple of dollars less when you're buying a dozen pairs at a time versus the strikes, but I like the strikes because they are the fastest. That's what I appreciate about them. You just snip off the cover of your speaker wire, do a tiny little splay, and then just put them in there, screw them on, and you're good to go. You're not messing around with it on your fingers whatsoever with the strikes. It's really, really fast and easy. So I like those. And then last question that's coming in from Trevor for this week, there are quite a few self-powered pairs of speakers now that include an HDMI ARC audio return channel input on the self-powered speakers. And he's asking, can you plug an HDMI cable from the output of an Apple TV 4K directly into the HDMI port on those speakers, or does there need to be a TV in between the Apple TV 4K and the self-powered speakers? Trevor is actually visually impaired, and he'd like a simple setup in his garage to listen to football games, but he wants to play the TV broadcast, not a radio broadcast. So he was hoping he could do that with an Apple TV 4K and some self-powered speakers, but without a television being present whatsoever. So those HDMI ARC ports that are on the back of the self-powered speakers, they are specifically looking for an audio return channel signal. They are not just a regular HDMI input like you'd find on the back of your AV receiver or even the HDMI inputs on your television. It does need to be an audio return channel signal, which includes a little data flag in there, and they're not going to work if you just plug an Apple TV 4K straight into the back of the self-powered speakers with the HDMI ARC ports. So you do need a device in between. So naturally, the device in between could be a television, but there are also like just HDMI to optical, little converter boxes. Not a television, not expensive at all. You can just go to Amazon and search for HDMI to optical converter box, and it's inexpensive and simple. And now the Apple TV 4K can plug directly into that converter box, and then you'll feed an optical audio connection to the back of the self-powered speakers. So you don't even have to have the HDMI ARC input on the back of the self-powered speakers. There's very few self-powered speakers that don't have an optical audio input. So that's one way to do it. Another way you could do it would be, instead of a pair of self-powered speakers, you could get a sound bar. So there are plenty of sound bars that are also HDMI ARC only, like the Sonos sound bars are HDMI ARC only. But there are plenty of soundbars that have one or two regular HDMI ports, and then they will also have an HDMI output, which is also the HDMI ARC port, but they will have just a regular HDMI input on plenty of soundbars. So the Klipsch soundbars are an example of that. So maybe that's a way that you could do this, right? If it's just a garage setup and it doesn't have to be a pair of separate speakers, here's one where a soundbar instead of a pair of self-powered speakers actually might be the better solution, so that you can do this very simple setup without there having to be a television present. Okay, so lastly for this week, we've got Sasi. As mentioned in the news, the new Revel Performa 4 series of speakers is identical to the Arcam Radia Series, right down to there only being a single center channel speaker model, and it is a two-way MTM design. So yeah, you've got your woofer, tweeter, woofer, or a mid-range tweeter, mid-range that's going there in a horizontal layout. So it's a woofer beside the tweeter and then a woofer beside the tweeter on the other side. So the older Performa 3 series had two center speaker models. It had an MTM two-way, and then they also had a larger, more expensive three-way center speaker that had a tweeter vertically aligned above a dedicated mid-range driver and then flanked on either side by a pair of bass woofers. So Sasi knows that we've said in the past how a two-way MTM center doesn't inherently have to be a bad thing. He tends to agree to a certain extent, he says. We've said how the crossover of that speaker needs to be carefully designed and implemented. It's not just as simple as taking a vertical Dapolito array speaker and flopping it onto its side. You need to take a bit more care with its design than that. But why do we suppose that Revel would invite the instant criticism that comes from online critics that they instantly poo-poo two-way MTM center speaker design? Why not still have two center speaker models and at least provide the option for a three-way center with a vertical tweeter and mid-range stack like they did before? Sasi has heard from a lot of dealers that in the real world, three-way center speakers simply don't sell nearly as well as MTM centers. Most people don't like the necessary additional height of the center speaker when you have a vertical tweeter mid-range stack. So is that all there is to it? Or MTM centers, they sell better, and why even bother having a three-way model? So yeah, I mean, certainly that's part of it, right? Part of it is that they're going to go with what the sales data tells them. It's very clear from the price points that price is a factor in this Performa 4 series and in the Arcam Radia series. I mean, these are not cheap speakers by any means, but we've seen much more expensive speakers, even like from prior Performa series. Sometimes they've tried to move them a bit more up market. Now they've got that Performa BE series with the beryllium tweeters, and that's a much more expensive series of speakers, even though it shares the Performa branding. But the Performa 4, they're clearly targeting price as part of this. So yeah, I imagine a lot of it is just the sales data. They have the sales data from the Performa 3 series, and they probably saw that the sales of the two-way center, way outpaced the three-way center. So yeah, I would suspect that it is largely just based on that. And then Revel is one of the companies that has been doing two-way MTM center speakers the right way for maybe the longest time. It's certainly one of the ones where when I was going back searching for specifically for narrow height center speakers, right? One of the setups I had at one point in the past, I needed a narrow height center speaker. So one with a vertical array of a tweeter and a mid-range simply wasn't going to work for physical reasons. And I went, I tested a lot of center speakers and found that problem. I was doing the thing of I'm sitting right in front of it, but then just swaying back and forth a little bit, and you can hear the lobing, that interference pattern that comes from where the mid-range drivers or the woofers are playing the same frequencies in common with the tweeter. And if you're holding perfectly still head in a vise, it's really not a problem if you're directly in front. But yeah, if you move left and right, you can hear that difference in timbre and tone as it changes. So you get those interferences. Revel is one of the few speakers that I tested out when I was doing that. I was like, oh, they actually designed it right. They are using a lower crossover frequency, which inherently helps. They're using robust tweeters, then playing them down to a lower frequency, and then giving them a very steep fourth order crossover on both the bottom end of the tweeter and the top end of the bass woofers on either side of that tweeter. That is a big, big help. And then they, for a long time, been using waveguides to control the horizontal and vertical dispersion of the tweeter so that it lines up properly and doesn't have as many phase error issues with the woofers that are on either side. So they're a good example of there are limitations. There are always going to be limitations with an MTM design in the horizontal dispersion, but if you design it carefully, if you use the correct components, if you put them in the proper dispersion waveguide, if you control the crossover properly, you don't have to inherently have a bad sound from an MTM center. So yeah, I trust Revel to do this. They've been doing it for a long time. They've been doing it right, and I'm sure the sales data lines up to where this is what made the most sense. So his second part of his question, over at Philharmonic Audio, they've been updating some of their speaker lineup, and their most popular speaker, which was the three-way BMR monitor, they're switching over from a RAL ribbon tweeter to a folded ribbon tweeter, an air motion tweeter that they call it. But yeah, that's a folded ribbon tweeter, and they're making that as sort of a running change. They're still going to be calling it the BMR monitor, but instead of a RAL ribbon tweeter, it's going to have this folded ribbon tweeter. So depending on the finish options that you choose for the cabinet, the price is remaining at between $1,900 a pair and $2,300 a pair. So they're not changing the price point on it with the change of this component. And then they've also said they're going to be releasing a new Super BMR monitor, and it's also going to use that same folded ribbon tweeter, but it's going to have two dedicated mid-range drivers, one above and one below the tweeter, and then they're going to upgrade the bass woofer to a Purify bass woofer. So it's essentially going to be a smaller version of their current Philharmonic HT Tower. It's sharing some of that driver design in common with the HT Tower, but in a stand-mounted monitor speaker design. So Sasi inquired with Philharmonic directly, and they replied that in a controlled listening room, people really cannot tell the difference between the two different tweeters. But Sasi has listened in person to the original BMR tower with the RAL ribbon tweeter and compared it to the HT tower that was using the new folded ribbon AMT tweeter that's going into the updated designs. And he says he'd have to agree to disagree. He knows that I am a fan of ribbon tweeters. So what do I think? Why move away from the RAL ribbon tweeter? And was it just because it was a sighted listening experience? He knew which one was the RAL and which one was the folded ribbon tweeter. Is that really it? Was it playing a trick on his mind? Or, is he correct in thinking he can actually hear the difference between the folded ribbon tweeter and the RAL ribbon tweeter? What has my experience been? Because I've listened to folded ribbon tweeters and RAL ribbon tweeters. So even in a blind listening comparison, would that really be there? Yeah. So, I mean, that's a little bit of speculation, of course, while we're talking about it. I'd venture to say the lion's share is because it was cited. I think having that knowledge beforehand when you're listening makes a bigger difference than we intend for it to, than we think it will. We can try to convince ourselves that we're ignoring, the beforehand knowledge and the cited listening comparison, but there's just no way to make our human brains do that, and it makes a bigger difference than we expect it to. It put me in a blind listening comparison with, a really good folded ribbon tweeter versus a RAL true ribbon tweeter. I think I'd be very hard pressed to actually be able, in a blind listening comparison, genuinely be able to tell them apart outside of, maybe doing some very specific, dispersion and directivity tests, right? If I've got them set up and optimized for my listing position, I think I'm going to have an impossible time telling them apart blindly. It's going to be if I'm getting right up close to them and doing my, wacky pink noise is playing constantly, and then I'm moving myself around the speaker. It's like there's going to be some minor directivity differences, right? What is the vertical dispersion going to be? What is the horizontal dispersion going to be? Where's going to be that moment where I can start to detect a timbral difference as I move way off axis, from those different tweeters? They're not necessarily going to be identical in those respects. So maybe in that type of testing condition, I'll be able to identify them, even in a blind comparison. But from just a regular listening, I'm just sitting in a normal seat listening to those speakers. Yeah, it's not going to be such a gigantic difference in my estimation. I think the cited listening comparison is a huge part of that. I think it's most likely just a business reason why they're switching over. They're probably ordering Philharmonic is a small speaker company. They're not a gigantic speaker company. So when they're ordering parts, it's a big difference to them, if they're ordering 1,000 of something or 10,000 of something. That's going to be a big price difference for them. They're not a company so large that they're ordering millions of parts at a time. So I imagine that if they have one speaker model that they stuck with for RAL ribbon tweeters, but then they're sharing the folded ribbon tweeter across a lot of different speakers in their lineup, they're just going to have, a scale difference in terms of the price. They're going to be able to order a lot more of those folded ribbon tweeters all at once and get a price break. And business wise, that's just going to make a whole lot of sense. So I think that's mostly speculation on my part. They didn't say clearly for themselves what it was, but speculation on my part. I think it's a business decision. It would make sense. I think that's an educated guess that makes a lot of sense. All right. So that's it for this week. Those are all the questions answered once again. It's a great time to send in your questions to AVRant if you want them on the podcast, because we have cleared out our backlog. So if you'd like to send your question in, please send it via email. It's question@avrant.com. That's our email address. The best way to get in touch with us. It's first in, first out, and it's a great time to send it in. So question@avrant.com. All right, I'd like to thank our listeners of the week once again, folks who supported this podcast. You can come to our website, avrant.com, and click on the Support AVRant link. That'll take you to PayPal if you'd like to make a one-time donation. And over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 119 patrons who are holding strong over there. And then we want to thank folks who sent in notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going. Big thanks to David, Richard, Trevor, and Sasi for doing that this past week. So yeah, on behalf of Tom Andry, my name is Rob H. This has been AVRant. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com.
This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.